Hi everyone, it is Thankful Thursdays. This is Caroline, Cavernchick. I am going to answer Tomax26's question. So I'll read it out first. It seems like most of us suffering from an ED disorder have the common experience of childhood abuse. As a guy whose mother was into binge and purge and anorexia and who sexually abused me when I was a child, it seems that even as a guy, I have reacted like most of the women who fall into ED behavior because of sexual abuse. Like as if this abuse is a common link or cause. Do you think ED is an inescapable reaction that always needs therapy? Ooh, okay. So this is a loaded question, but I want to answer it and respond and challenge myself to go there in this space. So, background before I answer. I myself was abused when I was in high school. I was sexually abused throughout the course of a year and a half by someone I grew up with that was my age, and a guy that was my age, and I was date raped my second month of college by a stranger. And I say date rape because I had given consent to kissing and making out, but beyond that it was rape. So that's why I tend to classify it as date rape. So those two things are part of my past, and my eating disorder began when I was 11. So I tend to not think of being date raped as having a huge effect on my eating disorder, since that was when I was 19 and I'd already had an eating disorder for, 8 years at that point. But I absolutely link the worsening of my bulimia in high school to being molested and sexually abused. So, do I think an eating disorder is inescapable when you've been abused? No, but I think it's difficult to, I can't imagine anyone not responding in some either self-destructive or addictive way to abuse. It is very common from what I have seen and from people I have spoken with for an eating disorder to be a reaction to sexual abuse and to abuse. And that would make sense, because what is physical sexual abuse? It is abuse on your body. And so, that's going to take obviously mental, psychological, and physical, a mental and psychological toll on you, and physically, you're going to respond, right? For me personally, like I said, I already had an eating disorder, but it's crazy that this is the question I'm being asked this week, because even though that was 15 years ago and I've been through tremendous therapy and have done tons of public speaking on sexual abuse and sexual violence and told my story countless times through activist work and my poetry and writing, for some reason this past 2 weeks it has been coming up as if it were yesterday. And maybe, and so this is so timely, and I'm able to give a really honest, raw account right now, but I feel like why it can seem inescapable that an eating disorder would be the result after being abused is, for me personally, I feel like what happened was, I covered my body with protective layers, right? I gained weight from bulimia. So when I was 13, 14, and my bulimia had just begun, my weight didn't fluctuate really. If anything, I believe I dropped some weight. And then when this person started abusing me, I feel now I can link that to when I began to hold excess layers to my skin. That's when my weight gain began. And even though I was bulimic and binging and purging all the time, my body was covering me to protect me and shield me from the pain, from being abused, from what had happened, and you know, it lasted for like a year and a half because, I mean, so many different reasons, but one of them was, you know, I didn't even know what to call it. Like, I knew it was wrong, it was abusive, I said no, I did what I could to stop it, but it was in health class in the middle of 10th grade that the teacher was up at the front talking about what abuse was, sexual abuse was, and I started crying, and I realized, like, that's me, that's what I'm experiencing. So, I mean, after that, my weight gain increased tremendously, and my eating disorder got so much worse, and I started having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and, you know, that's a different psychological beast than the actual specifics of the eating disorder, but the point being that my reaction was to cover myself and shield myself and protect myself, and, like, where do I have the most, like, most body issues and body image issues? My lower stomach, like, the area that protects and shields, like, my sexuality, my womanhood, and I feel like I'm really beginning to process what that means, and wanting to let that shield go, and wanting to know that I can trust myself enough to be strong through whatever I encounter in life. So do I think an eating disorder is inescapable? No. Was it inescapable for me? Yes, I was already in it, and like, I already had an eating disorder. I was already self-destructive and cutting myself, and then this happened. It only exacerbated everything and added literal, physical, emotional, mental layers to the whole thing. The other part was, does it always need therapy? Every person heals differently from every situation, so I don't feel comfortable giving an absolute, yes, you need therapy. Did therapy work for me? 100%. Would I be where I am today without therapy? Absolutely not. But that's what worked for me. I think in terms of the healing from the sexual abuse and how that related to my body image and my eating disorder, it is a matter of expressing and letting out emotions and experiences. So whether that comes through therapy or writing or talking to a friend, it doesn't matter. I mean, like I said, I do a lot of activist work, and I did a ton of public speaking about my story in college. So that was cathartic and helpful. But the most helpful moments have been when I've let myself be fully vulnerable and cry out the pain and talk out the pain. So I'm not sure what form that would take for people, but and this, you know, and this is always a really tricky space of, like, speaking out when you've been abused. Like, you can't force someone to have to speak out. If one wants to keep that inside, that's their story, right? But I have found it important to let out my story, and that doesn't mean sharing it with the entire world. That's, you know, as an activist, that's how I do things. I'm a personal as political person, but I do feel it is important to reach a space of acceptance and acknowledgement, and to allow for a healthy purging of that, right? Rather than purging it out through binge and purge, or adding layers to protect yourself, or starving off layers to avoid it. Like, those are not good ways to cope with abuse, but so I hope that helps. Yeah, I hope that helps. I just know that one of the most important things is letting go of the shame and the blame. That I do know. And to do that in a healthy, productive, safe way, to let go of the blame and shame that so many of us who have been abused feel. I feel like otherwise, you know, we can eat our blame or starve ourselves from that rather than witnessing it and letting it pass through. So, okay. Peace and blessings to all, and lots of love. Hope everyone's having a beautiful Thursday.